welcome to the Crannog Cast. I'm Amy, I'm the new curator here at the Scottish Crannog Centre. As you can see, we have ditched Rich for today. We're doing an International Women's Day special, so I'm here with some of the amazing women who work here at the Crannog, so I shall let them introduce themselves.
I'm Daisy, I am an apprentice.
I'm Jess, and I am assistant on the pottery project at the moment.
I'm Rachel, and I'm one of the assistant directors, and Daisy is an apprentice ambassador. Ambassador!
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I thought we'd start by talking about roles of women in the Iron Age. If anyone has any ideas about what women might have done in our Crannog site.
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
I've had several thoughts on this topic.
This has been prepping.
Several thoughts. So, archaeologically speaking, the way that we determine people's roles in history is either through the writing, so the literary evidence that they've left behind. Best, of course, is always first-person evidence, or the impact that their role has had on their physical body, so through their skeleton. But no one's writing anything down in the Iron Age, so we can rule that out. And what we find is that people are mostly cremating their dead as well at this point. So we don't really have that evidence either, which leaves us with a bit of a blank, which I'm not sure how to take forward. But Amy and I were talking about this in the car actually over here.
The logboat on the way to work.
On the logboat, yeah. So we were doing our daily commute in the logboat, and we were discussing about how, because people are living in these community structures, we think, and possibly extended families as well, that you're probably not seeing as strong a gender division when it comes to labour as we might expect. And we were talking about how that ties into how we run our museum as well. Everyone is sort of able to do everything. So everyone has a basic knowledge of how to do drop spinning, so creating fibres, textiles. Everyone has sort of basic knowledge on how to use the lathe for woodworking. And some people have more of a knack for it than others, and some people are more interested in it than others. And I think that this is probably something that would have happened historically speaking as well. People always have things that they enjoy more, or have more patience for, or just have that skill or that sort of talent for. And I think that would be happening then as well, that some people are more into woodworking than others.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you look at our collection, we have, so much stuff that they were doing. They were farming, but they were also making their own clothes, woodworking, as you mentioned, cooking, building a crannog, which is a lot of work. So you're really looking at about 20-25 people on this crannog. So I guess everyone would have to kind of muck in, help out. So you would probably not be seeing the same gender divide.
Yeah.
I think there's a difference in also, like, not just thinking about gender, but also in terms of like age. So there's certain points in life where you take on different roles, but that doesn't mean you have that role forever. And it doesn't also mean that when you get older, for example, you might not be able to physically do some of the stuff you were doing when you were 13 or whatever. But that doesn't mean you are any less able to contribute. So I think a big part of the Iron Age that sometimes gets missed is that kind of like age thing as well. A lot of the drawings in our museum are kind of middle-aged people with beards. And one really terrifying child and goes who
she haunts
doesn't
me.
have eyebrows. It's quite scary. You have to spot her if you come to Wednesday.
I went to Wednesday.
So we have Wednesday Addams in the crowd. Yeah, but even that, so that's like in people's imaginations that people are this age, they're doing these jobs, and actually, like, it's a really good role of the museum to challenge that.
Yeah, I also thought maybe Jess and Rachel could quickly talk about, we were at an MA conference yesterday in Glasgow, and we talked about our pottery project. And we are working with lots of community groups like Women's Aid Perth and things like that. But we were talking about how pottery is seen as a domestic kind of material, and fighting gender roles on that as well. So I thought maybe you could chat a bit about that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Rachel and I were actually discussing this about how I think it was Rasak formed was just two women having a chat over a cup of tea,
Mm-hmm.
and how we could incorporate that sort of the warmth and the safety of a cup of tea, of a mug, and how sort of inherently cozy and homey that is into our pottery project. But then we're thinking, actually, we don't want pottery and ceramic just to be associated with sort of domestic spaces or traditionally female-led spaces like that. So we talk about other uses for pottery, and we sort of realised it's one of the most resilient materials, especially one of the most resilient sort of human-made materials. I would think stone is above that, but that occurs totally naturally. And we use it for plates, we use it for mugs, but I don't think gendering those as well is very helpful, because everyone needs to eat, everyone needs to drink. We also use pottery in forging. So when you're making a furnace, you need the pottery for the walls, you need it for the, I don't know the terminology, but the funnel for the bellows.
Oh, the tuyere.
Thank
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the crucibles as well.
Crucibles
So,
too.
yeah. And the more heat that some of these pots take, like those crucibles, you almost get like vitrification where it becomes glass, so it becomes even more resilient the more heat it's experiencing. So pottery survives. It is a survivor. Yes. Yeah. I think the other thing we talked about was the fact that pottery is universal as well. So as Jess was saying, there's no point gendering it, because most people have a favourite mug. This is not my favourite mug.
We all have our favourites.
It's got a digger on it. It's not even my mug.
secretly love it.
I do secretly
It
love
is
it.
her favourite.
But there's that thing around pottery that the fingerprints, and you can put in our collection we have some pieces from Don Varavat that have got fingerprint impressions in the bottom of the pot, and again also that there's the size of them. There's some people that think, well, maybe they're made by children, which again like questions, well, who's making pottery as well as who's using the pottery. But the fact that you can put your finger into a fingerprint, you get that instant connection to someone from the past. And also making things as well, like how you would that when you put your fingerprint in, you can actually feel the pressure that someone's putting in to shape that bit of clay. And then when you make clay yourself, and we were doing a lot of work with particular groups like Perth Women's Aid and the Cedar Project and Bernardo's, where they're actually making things from clay, and you can get that agency. And also, if you don't like it, you can change it, which helps.
It's also safe to work with.
As
well. This was a big point, was that you shouldn't eat too much clay, but you can if you really want to.
No,
It doesn't taste the best.
Is that from experience?
I'm not saying that.
Yeah, it's a safe material.
Yeah.
Get hungry, Julie.
Hello.
See a mug.
Snack. So, I mean, we've spoken a lot about Iron Age women's roles in society. I don't know how you guys feel about your experience as women in the museum sector. I know when I was at uni, it was very, there was a lot of men in my course, and I was taught by male lecturers and things like that. So it was really nice, especially yesterday at the conference, meeting young women in museums as well, just having that kind of connection with them. So
Definitely. It's something that we were talking with a couple of people afterwards as well. And that was something that we sort of immediately bonded over as well. I was like, oh, it's so nice to interact with other like women in the space, in the industry. And it's something that I think we're seeing more and more in the heritage industry and in the sort of scientific communities, that more and more women are coming forward, are going ahead, are forging ahead, are sort of getting recognition for their work as well. I know historically that's been a big thing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of women that led in archaeological like digs and stuff. Like Mary Leakey and the Latoli footprints, and like there's so many women out there that did amazing things in the past, and are still, and we're kind of just carrying on from that as well. So that momentum is continuing and is growing. And at that conference, there was a lot more women than men at the conference as well. I think that's a trend across a lot of museums, but then it's also got to go up into like the upper levels of those museums, and that's where it sometimes can become a challenge. So it's building in those sorts of things and having conversations around things like also I think the museum sector's really been like, is really quite good. I've been to a couple of talks where people have actually said that, or we've had conversations about like maternity leave, for example, which is quite a big barrier in a lot of jobs, like you're a bit scared of mentioning it, whereas there seems to be like more openness within the sector, and they just keep building on that around like, well, what are the barriers to women continuing to work in museums beyond a certain point, and how do we challenge that? And so I think that's been really good. Daisy, you've been exceptionally quiet.
Nothing to add. You say that.
No.
Because you went to a really big conference, didn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
What was that like?
Mad.
Were people friendly? Were people
No, it was
welcoming?
really nice. Yeah. I think I was really nervous, but quite a lot of people came up to me afterwards and was like, "Did well." But no, there was quite a lot of females there as well. It's kind of all a blur. Yeah. But no, it was good.
What about your apprenticeship? Do you want to talk about that briefly? You are an apprentice ambassador now.
So I've not really done too much with the apprentice ambassadors at the moment.
School.
But I'm going to, I've been to schools, and I'm also hopefully going to another school hopefully this week, next week. But I mean, I've not really seen a massive effect on, like, negatively on women in museums nowadays. I think we've got quite a lot of women that work here. I think actually we have more than men. But yeah, I think it's good.
I was just trying to work out how many people we. I was like, how many?
I don't know, because we've had quite a lot of men leave.
Yeah, that's true. And then
They don't like us. It's me.
I don't know. I think you're right with that. And tied into it is age as well. So you're like coming in as a young apprentice. So you started when you were 16. So you're a young woman coming into the professional workplace. Dum dum dum. Yeah. Ooh. And then we've also got like flying the progress flag outside the front, and I think there's a lot of things that tie into not only International Women's Day but also being a welcoming, accepting place where people feel represented regardless of age or gender or sexuality or belief, and that's something that you've got to keep aiming for and keep reflecting on. Is it working? Is it not working?
That was something as well. At the conference yesterday, one of the panels was on anti-racism and sort of decolonising museum spaces. And the people who led that panel, there was 3 people, and 3 of them were women. 2 of them were women of colour as well, which is amazing to see. And I just think it's encouraging to see how the space is becoming more diverse and more LGBTQ friendly, and it just needs to keep going. Like, there's no point to where you can stop and say this is enough.
Yeah, I think that was one of the main points yesterday. Someone said there's no perfect space, but the whole point is that you keep trying to make it better. Like, there's no end point. And you can always be doing better. So
And if you're doing one thing well, then it tends to trickle into another thing. So people start to feel more welcome or represented or able to contribute, and then other people will sort of that spreads. And it's rather than, like they were saying yesterday, about having like one project approach where we're going to deal with sustainability, we're going to ignore everything else because we're sustainable. But that doesn't work, because you need that holistic like approach. It affects everything and it brings everything into it. And I think that's kind of also one of the powers of like International Women's Day, is it deals with a lot of other relevant conversations as well around it. So it brings everything together. Are you happy so far? She's like, yeah.
I think so. Okay, so inspired by all the women in the Iron Age doing all their different jobs around the Cranog, thought maybe we could talk about our jobs for a bit. So I'm curator, so I basically look after the whole collection, create new displays, exhibits. I help Jess with pottery projects sometimes when she needs a hand.
So much.
Quite often.
All the time.
Every day.
So that's my job around here. So it's really nice to be able to incorporate some of these different groups and things into the museum. For example, I worked on a stone display case with from UNESCO Rila, which was really nice. So we kind of got out all our stone tool objects, and I mean, we had our own ideas of what they were and what they might have been in the Iron Age. And there's one rock, a big round orange stone that we called a pounder stone, and Hayab said, no, that's not what I would call a pounder stone, which, yeah, it was great. And he said he would use it in Eritrea as to bake bread on. So you'd put the dough kind of around the outside of the stone and bake bread that way on it, which was just really refreshing to have those different kind of perspectives on things. Because obviously, Iron Age, prehistory, you mentioned, Jess, we have nothing written down, so we don't have much idea of what's going on then. But it was really nice to have that different perspective from different part of the world, and add it to our own perspective of the collection itself.
Well, I work in the cooking area, so I make all the Iron Age food when they come round.
She makes very good Iron Age food.
Very good
Tip-top.
food, yeah.
The best bread.
Yes. You need to come and try Daisy's bread.
Actually, the fruit crumble.
Oh, yeah.
That was the award winner.
Your throat was good though. Yeah, but no, I wanted to do cooking in college and then go to uni for it, so it kind of just made sense that I worked in the cooking area, and now I just want to train all the new people we're hopefully employing to do it, because it gets a bit boring after a while. But no, I do the cooking, it's quite fun. We've got a quernstone in the museum, literally right beside us, and we also have a replica of that in cooking, which we demonstrate to mostly children, but if adults want to see it, they can. And that we found out, did we find a body in that from Iron Age, and they had a hunchback or something. Yeah, so
So
heard
when
that
you
somewhere.
when you dig up bog bodies, you can tell
Yeah.
it's been grain grinding, because you
So,
mentioned their back.
It was a woman, which is not great, but it's fine. No, they'd all have separate roles, but they'd also all kind of do each role at the same time. So there'd be like a head, I think, but I don't.
You see it in cities as also, so like maybe in like there's a city in Turkey, Çatalhöyük, where the women there were found with very sort of strange deformed toes because they had been grain grinding, and that had obviously been like a major role. But then you're also in a city where you're not, like, you probably have more specific jobs and things that you have to do because you're not farming and things like that, whereas where we are, like, it's very rural, it's one cranog with a farm, so you've probably got a lot more, you're all going to have the same aches and pains. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, we all do nowadays.
It's true.
I don't want to throw another spanner in the works or anything, but when we talk about historical bodies, we don't say a man or a woman. We say male or female, because man, woman, those are describing someone's gender, which is a social construct. We can't say how people in the past would have identified. So we go basically off of the sort of chemical DNA makeup of their skeleton, which we label as male or female. Which again, there's so much more nuance there, but so we'd say we found a female skeleton with these deformities, rather than woman, because we don't know if that person self-identified as a woman or a man.
No, that is a really good point.
Just to complicate things
Yes.
a bit more.
It's good. Are you going to talk about pottery?
Oh,
Just you, Jess.
Oh. So I work on the pottery project at the moment with Rachel. Rachel has been amazing at securing us funding, so we can actually do it. And I am sort of doing the dirty work. Literally cleaning hundreds of shards of pottery. So our assemblage is from Dunbaravat, which is a crannog from the Isle of Lewis, so the same time period as our crannog here at Oakbank, but just a very different location. We don't find much pottery here, but we do find a lot at Lewis. It's fairly normal, I think, for an assemblage, an Iron Age assemblage from Lewis, but the fingerprints that I think you mentioned have been really exciting. Each piece is unique as well. You can't ever say that that one of these thousands of pieces isn't special, even though it gets really tiring sometimes.
Just a little bit.
Just yeah. It's a lot.
I'm
But-
convinced Jess is going to turn into a pot.
Yeah, you'll come into the museum one day and
And
I'll
you'll
just
just be like sat there. Yeah. I can see it.
yeah, definitely, I can feel it.
Yeah.
Getting crunchier every day. What Rachel and I do a lot is we go out and do outreach with our assemblage and
Inreach.
Oh, inreach,
They're coming
outreach and
in,
inreach.
but we're going out to bring them in.
with various support groups, with a focus on women and children and family groups, which has been really amazing.
Yeah, and I think there's parallels. We were talking about this in the car yesterday, that there's like parallels between the collection and getting that collection to be able to tell its stories and speak to people in new ways. You know, like before we knew we had the fingerprints, and the fingerprints were like the most exciting thing about the pottery. We were like, wow, you can put your finger in, ooh. You know, and that was amazing, and it's a beautiful connection. But there's a lot more. I mean, we've got bags and 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 bags of pottery, which actually is really unusual from the Iron Age because it doesn't always turn up and it doesn't survive very well. So we've got some really, really beautiful pieces, but there's loads of it. And actually, that's the sort of collection where, unless you're doing a PhD or something, it's going to get tucked away in the back of the museum, and we're going to get the highlight spotlight pieces with fingerprints out. You know. And so its potential hasn't been tapped, and it hasn't been able to tell its stories. It's maybe been overlooked in the past, and then we've got groups of people who maybe don't feel able to contribute or feel like their voices have been sort of covered over by the voices of other people, or that they, you know, and some of their agency and ability to make change has been taken away. And then working with sort of there's lots and lots of parallels, and there's lots of lovely kind of connections that have been made, and the learning that we've got about the collection, about it being, I mean, the idea, you're thinking about the resilience of pottery and how it survives, and the strength and the fact it can cope with fire, and actually it doesn't break, it gets harder in some cases. Well, that's something we'd not really thought about before, before actually working with these groups, and also talking about the mugs and the warmth and coming together. You know, it sounds great. It sounds like we planned the project around that. That was actually something that some of the ladies from RASAC came up with. You know, so you're learning constantly from other people. But the pottery's amazing because it's so normal. It's ordinary stuff. Yeah, that's what we like.
And the plan is to co-curate the new pottery display with all these groups. So Women's Aid Perth and RASAC will have a big say in how it's displayed and what the interpretation boards say and different things like that, which I think will be really nice as well.
Building at Dillard as well. Helping build some of the structures and helping build the walls and build something that's going to be there for years to come, and sort of having that physical. Also, it's good for your mind, like holding stuff and touching stuff and working with stuff. Like it takes you out of whatever.
Being outdoors.
Yeah, definitely.
And the nice thing with that is they started off just helping with the pottery project, and that's led to them now coming back to help with Dillard, which is really nice.
Yeah.
It's all about continuing those relationships in the future,
Yeah.
which is lovely. Yes. Yeah.
I was running a workshop on the beach the other day, and we had a couple down there, and we were doing the pottery bit of the workshop because we do the workshops, don't we, on a Wednesday, what they call day in the life workshops. You can book now. But we were all making pottery by the water, and it was beautiful, and the ducks were sort of swimming by, and the sun was sort of on the water and the hill, and it was just so beautiful. And I was actually thinking, like, I don't get to appreciate that as much as I did. So like often being more in the office or being on tours or being sort of running around a bit, and to have that time to just sit and like make a pot. I then sat in the on the till, so I was covering the till, and I just carried on making my pot, which I felt like I was sending an email, and I was like stroking the clay. I was like, oh, this feels really good. You know,
I came in the next morning and I was like, what's this? And then she was like, it's my pot.
It's my pot, you know. But there's something in that you're just trying to sort of, you're coming out of whatever you're in. It's mindfulness at the end of the day. It's being present in the moment where you're touching something. Or
It does look quite good, to be fair.
Sorry?
It looks really good.
Thank you. I know.
I've seen worse.
It's got
Serious?
like onion legs going on underneath. Can that be like the picture for this podcast? Is my pot?
Oh yeah.
We just Daisy's face in the middle.
I'll face the window.
yeah, it's been really good. And I think working with groups where also like the groups are led by women. There's been a very, very like positive overarching kind of process within that around sort of the fact that it's pottery, and we're working with survivors of domestic abuse and families that have additional support needs. But there's been a sort of lot of women sort of the managerial or top of the organisation roles, and that's been really, really great too. So I think we've had a good year. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotta have a good next year. Yeah.
Because you've got the build group from Deleuve as well.
Yes, Women's Cooperative. I don't know if you want to talk about that, Rachel.
The Crosscut Co-op.
Yes.
Yeah. So they have been. So when we started designing looking at a new museum and what we wanted, and one of the things that came up very, very early on is this like triangle of understanding that we're sort of approaching the development with. So you've got what is kind of like feasible, what do you need in a museum? So that's one of the aspects. So one of the aspects is the academic rigor. So for example, we know that a roundhouse is built like this. You know, we know that this is the footprint of a roundhouse. We know from the artifacts it's certain things they were doing. We have that knowledge. And then from Pitlochry, we've got the Carn-Du roundhouse, which is what we're going to try and build a replica of on the new site. So that's academic rigour. But then at the same time, we're a museum. We've got to fit 30 people in that roundhouse. There's no point building a tiny mini one. Maybe we need to make the doorways bigger. So there's wheelchair accessibility. So there's all these things that makes a site, and fire escape's got to be wide enough to get people out, all these different things. So that's your other one. And then at the top of this, there's basically the unknown, which is your romance. So what is it that we don't know? What is it that we're interpreting? What are we adding into? And through these three things, we can really kind of challenge and play around with a lot of the stuff that people have assumed about the Iron Age previous. And one of the things I noticed when going on tours and doing tours at the Crannog Centre is people would sometimes say, well, when the men were building Crannog, like, what were the women doing? You're like, well, the women were probably building the Crannog too. Yeah, it's quite a big job. But that kind of then led to the fact that, well, how do we challenge that? And there's a couple of different ways. So the roof of the roundhouse is actually going to be basket woven. And this is working with Tanya from the University of Edinburgh. And she has been a big advocate for a long time on the fact that roundhouse roofs may not have been supported by like internal posts and a ring beam with planks, like timbers like this, but it may have been a woven basket roof that is supported by the wall. So then it doesn't necessarily have internal timbers, but also it's a different structure, would have had a different shape, would have had a different feeling inside. And also from her research into this, she's been saying she can tell you a lot more, so you have to kind of like look her up. But she was, looking at the fact that weaving and basket work and stuff is often something that is more traditionally ethnographically something that women are doing, because you've got the nimbleness and the dexterity of your fingers that you can weave these structures. And then the other thing is that the team that we're working with, so this is all external people from the sort of people that day-to-day work at the Crannog, but it's all part of the Crannog community. We've got women who are going to be actually building the structures. So the Crosscut Co-op is a group of women from Glasgow, incredibly talented green woodworkers, joiners, and they have been in it from the start, looking at how do we make these buildings like viable, working with a female structural engineer, working with architects, working with, we kind of had women across the board in the development, which has been really great. But that's actually also then challenging when people come and go, well, what were women doing when men were building the Crannog? And we can go, well, you see that one? Women built that one. And that's also then where Perth Women's Aid and coming in to help build with the Crosscut Co-op, there's a kind of empowering competence building process where you're sort of thinking, well, actually we can do things that everybody else can do. There's no reason that these things can't be done. So I think it's been a really, really good process. I don't know if I'm waffling. I can't think of Sorry. Cheeky.
You little.
I haven't had my coffee. I'm just pretending to drink. This is.
I'm I've got a flat ball.
It's an empty mug.
Do you want to get it closer?
Movie magic.
Can you just fill it back up on it? Kind of like...
I'll put special
Yeah, thank you very much. It could be wine, just up to the top.
Anything else you wanted to?
Chantal, what do you think? You need to chip in.
I think
Our marketing officer, who's also a
Yes,
woman.
Chantal, our marketing officer, is
women
behind the
are
camera.
great.
Yeah?
Why did you laugh?
Go
I will
more.
elaborate.
Go on.
No, it's nice to work in an environment where it's a 50-50 split, and especially that each individual's tailored to their role, and they're not kind of put in a role because it's where they think they'll fit. They fit there because of the set of skills that they've got, and the experiences they've had and what they can bring to us, which is quite nice. And it's nice that we're expanding that and bringing that over to the Delurb site.
Yeah.
We're kind of keeping that. We're not losing that along the way. The team's staying the same. It's just going to grow. We're going to grow with the same values that we've developed the team that we've got today. We're putting people in roles that they're tailored for, and not just hiring a bunch of people and going, oh, you go there, and you go there.
Yeah.
It's specific, which is nice because it kind of breaks down the kind of whole concept of gender, especially in museums as well. But I've seen it everywhere where I've worked before. But it's nice that people are seen for their set of skills and their talents and their interests, and not for you work in the cooking area, Daisy, you work on the pottery project, Jess. Like Amy, you go in the office and do the curatorial stuff. Like, no, it's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, me and Jess started out as volunteers. So we came up and did tours and did everything.
Yeah.
Tried a bit of everything.
I'm just
And
surprised
then-
that they met me as a volunteer and still wanted to come out.
To be fair, I started as a volunteer too.
We're
We're all volunteers.
I'm an apprentice.
So good way to go, and then you understand the basics of everything you do.
But then you
That's
can
true,
see
that's
what you
true.
like thrive in, and then
Yeah.
I mean, look where we ended up. So that's nice. Yeah.
I think that aspect of choice as well, like when you come in and you're looking at, you might be coming in a certain role, that certain role is often slightly loose, which is also slightly stressful because you're like, actually, what am I doing? But it gives you that, it's designed to give you, hopefully with the support around it, give you that kind of opportunity to go, well, actually, there are it's a big role, but there are things that I do that I'm good at, or things I want to explore. So I'm actually going to go down that route of this job rather than trying to do everything. Do it well. Do it how you would do it. And that takes time. And I think that's going to be one of the challenges on the new site is how do you bring like all of this over to a new place and make it bigger and retain all of these things. So that's something we're going to be working on quite a lot, like thinking about. And we've had some work done on it already. I think it was Linnea Wallen, she's our PhD student, and she was doing work on uncertainty, and she's been super great as well. So looking at like how does the cranog work, and then also she's done a piece on how do we take the magic of the cranog, as she calls it, and move it to a new place and make it bigger. How does that work? So Chantal will have to have a chat with her.
Yes.
Yes. We're breaking the third wall or whatever wall
know.
this is.
Fourth
The fourth wall.
wall.
I don't know.
Well, the audience is aware of who I am. They just want to see me. I'm like
You're like a
stick.
mystery, yeah.
You're a stick.
You'll never get to know me. Unless you come and visit us, you just pop around the site quite often.
Is there anything else anyone wants to add? Amy? Host.
Yeah, I mean, just going back to the pottery project, you were talking about making pots, and it being quite therapeutic for all the community groups we work with and things. That's also something I've never experienced because with uni and stuff, it was always very academic. It was never hands-on, and then coming here, I actually got to try different things, which has been really nice. Given me a whole different perspective on archaeology, which has been really nice as well. And then just getting people in with these skills. So we have woodworkers on site. So we've got Ian and Julie, and Toby's Inches woodworking now as well. And Maureen, who she drop spins and different things like that. We got our spindle whirl out of the cabinet, and she had a look at that, and she was able to tell me different things about the weight and size and shape of it, from her own experience as a spinner, which I would never have picked up on, just because I don't have that skill, which is also really nice. But then again, I get to go out and try it, so then I can see what she's also talking about. So.
It develops your understanding.
Yes,
well.
exactly.
So it's not always experimental archaeology. It can be experiential, but that's still really valuable.
Yeah.
And it helps, especially when trying to engage other people in archaeology
exactly.
and their heritage. Like, what do we want to talk about?
Yeah. Well, I think that's all we have time for today. But I mean, we've barely scratched the surface of this whole topic. There's loads more that could be said about women's experiences in the Iron Age and museums itself. And like Rachel mentioned, just all of these other big issues that museums are talking about today. So this is really just the start of a much bigger conversation that needs to be had and kept being had. But thank you so much to everyone, my lovely panel today that have joined us. And thanks for watching and listening.
Can we do this again?
No.
Sometime in the future.
We only bring the women out once a week.
Once a year.
Yeah.
Crawling back into the cabinet.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.